Welcome back. I'm Professor Patel, and this is my lecture on Book 16 of the Odyssey, Father and Son. The major theme of this book is family, and we're going to see that through the action and the events of this story and the relationships between the characters. In some ways, family doesn't just mean family, blood members of the family. Odysseus seems to have people on Ithaca who are like family to him as well. So the book opens with Odysseus and a swineherd having breakfast. Swineherd is Eumaeus. Eumaeus still doesn't know that he sits and hosts with his missing king. He's hosting his missing king. Eumaeus is well liked by Odysseus, the narrator, and Telemachus. The text puts much emphasis on the positive qualities of this character. Telemachus comes back to the farmhouse. Eumaeus is overjoyed at his return. This father son type reunion and relationship foreshadows the reunion of Odysseus and Telemachus later in the book. Note also that Telemachus refers to Eumaeus as grandpa, and the narrator of our text, and remember it's no longer Odysseus, refers to Eumaeus as the commander in one line. Both titles convey respect and a likening to family. And one thing about Eumaeus, probably his most notable quality is his loyalty to Odysseus, even though Odysseus has been gone for 20 years. So around line 56, Odysseus as the beggar rises to offer Telemachus his chair when Telemachus walks into the farmhouse. Eumaeus orders him to stay seated and finds another chair, displaying that hospitality, that proper hospitality again. The three share a meal together. Eumaeus relates Odysseus's false tale about coming from Crete. So he sort of propagates the story that Odysseus told Eumaeus that he was once a wealthy nobleman and he's fallen on hard times and he came from Crete. Around line 68 to 110, Telemachus worries about trouble with the suitors, welcomes Odysseus as the beggar to the farmhouse, offers to clothe him, but Odysseus prefers to stay in his rags. Remember, this is his disguise. And he feeds him, tells Eumaeus to feed him as well. Odysseus, as the beggar, speaks passionately about wishing he could clear the house of the suitors. He wants to go in there and kill them and wipe them out, right? He wants to fight for right against wrong, right? And he sees it as completely improper that these suitors are eating a king's food and drinking his wine and wrecking his house and also trying to um, court his wife or marry his wife, really. Notice in this speech that Odysseus gives, he slips, he gives to his two companions, and his two companions don't catch this really. He says, my house twice, which you think would get some attention from Telemachus and Eumaeus, but it doesn't. Uh, Telemachus tells the beggar, Odysseus, that he is an only child of an only child, so he's all alone in this situation. He also explains his mother's situation and how she is being hard pressed by these suitors to get married. So Telemachus sends Eumaeus to Penelope to explain that he has returned, because remember, he returned apart from his ship secretly, and his ship is going to come in just a little bit here. And he says, many people want to plot my death on line 134. We learn that Laertes, Odysseus' father, is languishing out in the woods and has hardly eaten since Telemachus left to find information out about his father on his travels. Eumaeus leaves, and here we have Athena appearing again. And interestingly enough, she appears just next to Eumaeus, but she is only visible to Odysseus. This Odysseus has that connection to Athena, and probably she only wants Odysseus to see him as well. uh, she tells Odysseus to reveal himself to his son, and she transforms him, as usual, into a young and handsome man, cleans his hair, puts him in nice clothes, all those sorts of things. So he goes back into the farmhouse to see Telemachus. And on line 187, we get the line, I am your father. And Telemachus doubts him at first, sort of like, my father's probably dead. He's been lost at sea. Why are you saying this? And Odysseus comes back with, I suffered terribly at sea. This is lines 205 to 206. But after 20 years, I have come home. There's a very sentimental reunion, lots of tears and lamentations. And you got to remember that these two have not seen each other for 20 years, so they would hardly recognize each other. In fact, Telemachus was a small child when Odysseus left for Troy. Um, so Odysseus explains how the Phaeacians got him home and immediately starts planning to deal with the suitors. Around 114 suitors and henchmen are in the house, and more are on the way. Now, you might think, as Telemachus does, well, how are we going to deal with that? Right? That's a lot of suitors. And we're only two people right now. Do you think we could find somebody to help us fight against them? And Odysseus comes back with this how about Athena and Zeus? Right? So, once again, Odysseus is in Zeus's favor, and of course, he's always been in Athena's favor. So they sound like pretty good allies, right? So Odysseus is getting his family back together, and he also recognizes that the gods are on his side. So he must be doing something right in his actions, though he's done many wrong things along his way back from Troy and his trials at sea. He's also always reverent to the gods, and that's what matters in this world. uh, so the veteran, he's called the veteran Odysseus, tells his plan. Uh, so Telemachus is to return to the hall with the suitors, and Odysseus and Eumaeus will come later. And Odysseus is going to turn back into that guise as the beggar. He instructs Telemachus to hide all the weapons in the hall. I guess there's a bunch of weapons out in the hall. They're on display. And the first lie he tells them to tell is that they're getting tarnished by the smoke from the fire in the hall and that they need to be put back in the storeroom. And the second thing that they come up with is, oh, you tell them that, they might get drunk and start fighting with each other and hurting each other and killing each other. So uh, you are going to put the weapons away for their own safety, right? And that's a good appeal to make there. uh, Odysseus wants to test the men and women of the house. This is very interesting. They talk about house slaves, and um, there's lots of male and female slaves. In fact, Eumaeus is referred to as a slave. These are all people in Odysseus's employ. They're sort of like serfs to a feudal lord, is the way we might think of it. And uh, he's already wondering, have some of my female slaves been disloyal, I suppose, sleeping with the suitors? And they're not so concerned about the male suitors, that Greek patriarchal, I mean, the male slaves, that they're not so concerned about them. So Telemachus has returned secretly from his ship, and the ship now returns, and the suitors are on alert. They know the ship's back. They know Telemachus snuck away. They're wondering what he's been up to. And Eurymachus, Amphinomos, and other suitors arrive. Antinous presents the plot to kill Telemachus, whom they now fear. They fear Telemachus because he is a threat to them in some way. He could have raised allies while he was gone. He could have done something to get help to get rid of these suitors. They've been draining his house of resources. They've been harassing his mom. And he's a man now. Remember that Telemachus is a man now. And that's a big step, right? He's no longer considered a son. Amphinomos is one of the suitors. He's one of the vocal suitors, and he claims that he doesn't want to kill Telemachus, but if the gods want, he'll kill him. Very principled guy, right? But remember, in Greek literature, what the gods want is what you should do. Now, in this case, it seems sort of like just a cop out on Amphinomos's part. So we got to be careful about that. Well, Penelope has heard about the murder plot from Medon, who is her one of her slaves. All these slaves in the house, right? A female slave, and she calls out Antinous, who's sort of like a leader of the suitors. She calls him a brute, a sneak, and a criminal, right? And she even tells a story about once Odysseus saved Antinous's father from an angry mob, and she demands he stop hurting her and to make the other suitors stop as well. Eurymachus lies and reassures Penelope they are not trying to kill T, but if you note in lines 448 to 449, the narrator tells us he was thinking of killing Telemachus even as he denies it. It's almost funny, right? It's sort of like one of those Holden Caulfield moments, if you're familiar with Catcher in the Rye, where the character is saying one thing and then we kind of get the reality, and it's like, yes, the entire time he was planning on murdering Telemachus. So we know that the suitors are deceitful, that they're reckless, and that they will do just about anything to get this household, this land, this woman, and this treasure. The book ends back with Telemachus and Odysseus as a beggar again. Eumaeus arrives and tells him that a new ship of suitors have arrived. So even more uh, problems and danger coming. And really interestingly here, remember, Odysseus and Telemachus have revealed themselves to each other. I mean, Odysseus has revealed himself to Telemachus. So they just sort of, and they know that the gods are on their side. So they just sort of look at each other and smile like, okay, we'll get them too. So there's really not any concern with Telemachus and Odysseus. They're very confident in their ability to wreak havoc on the suitors, and that looks like what they're going to do here. Just to go into some of the themes of this book, for all the seafaring horrors and adventuring that go on in the Odyssey, Book 16 demonstrates, above all, really all along, the Odyssey has been about family, right? It's been about trying to get the family back together. It's about a father and a son. It's about a mother, right? And in this case, it's even about a grandfather, and that's Laertes. And we get the grandfather figure of Eumaeus, the swineherd, as well, who is one of the last loyal people to Odysseus, or one of the most loyal from the old days, even though Odysseus had been gone for 20 years. So family is really the great theme of Western literature and world literature, and that's kind of what the Odyssey comes down to. This theme of coming back to your family, of homecoming, right? This is the first time in the text in Book 16 that all family members, Telemachus, Odysseus, Penelope, and Laertes, are back on Ithaca. And if they're not quite together yet, the themes, even though they're not quite together yet, the themes of loyalty and hospitality also come through significantly in this book. Eumaeus and Telemachus display these qualities throughout the book to Odysseus as beggar. And then Telemachus is also a good son when he finds out that this is Odysseus, his father. Let's see. Um, Okay, and Eumaeus, in spite of his slave and swineherd status, is elevated to family status through his loyalty and hospitality as well. The family of Odysseus is still apart, but they're coming closer together as Odysseus's plans start to form and will eventually come to fruition. Now, back to the suitors, they are seemingly without family and appear to have loyalty only to themselves. And even the way that they are acting in this house, they're abusing hospitality and they're not hospitable to beggars. And when we'll see when Odysseus gets to the hall, he is mistreated by them and um, receives very rude welcome from them as well. so, so we've got the themes of family, and this is the first part of the homecoming, revealing himself to his son. We find out that the family spread apart. Laertes is living out in the fields and woods. He's kind of languishing since Telemachus went away, hardly eating at all. But we're going to draw him back in. And Penelope is just about at her wits' end, and now she knows that the suitors are plotting to kill Telemachus. So that's where we leave off. Uh, Odysseus is going to look for whoever is loyal to him, and we know that he is loyal to the gods, so he'll have them on his side, the side of family. Thank you.